Welcome to Community Watch, and today we have a very engaging and exciting conversation about race. Stay with us. Community Watch starts now.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg, how are you?
Just fine, brother, and yourself?
Well, I'm doing all right. I'm living the COVID reality of the moment, and I expect you are as well.
Uh, yeah.
Well, I am developing a collection of masks and staying hidden away, which has gotten old, but here we are.
Let's just say I'm doing some of my part. Um, that's about as comfortable as I am as talking about that.
Okay, well, we'll just drop that there then. Luckily, we have some excellent guests who will carry us through any difficulty today, and they are busy folks, and we are happy to have them. Cheryl Jenkins and Charles Love, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you. Glad to see you all.
Well, I know that the two of you are prime forces in One Community United. So how is that functioning during the pandemic year?
Cheryl?
We have also gone virtual. We have not met in person since March, but we have stayed busy with our work during the summer and then this fall and doing Zoom meetings where we've learned how to do Zoom, and we've continued to work. We're doing some work with our faith leaders and just the citizens of Roman Floyd County and staying active with engaging voters. What else, Charles?
Education. We've been supporting education initiatives with the virtual learning and those kinds of activities. So we've been motoring right along and keeping pretty good sized group of people engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, that's encouraging, because I know so much of the group's activity had to do with meetings of varying sizes out in public, and you haven't been able to do that. So it's good that you have been able to adapt.
Well, we are living in some interesting times, and there are some interesting issues being discussed, and the very mission of One Community United is bringing people together. Before the word unity became a national mantra, we were working on this. We've been doing this for 5 years, and so I don't know if that was happenstance or prophetic or coincidence that we have been dealing with the issue of race from the very inception of this organization. And we know that that is a topic of concern that's going on now, even during the divisive conversations that are going on.
Well, Charles and Cheryl, thank y'all again, because I think more than ever, history shows us that, for change truly to come about, there truly has to be a will of the people. People have to truly want change and be willing to do what it takes to bring about change. And so for me, I'm glad we're having this discussion today about some of the initiatives that y'all are having and creating what I like to call safe spaces. One of the criticisms that I have, and me and Doc talk about this a lot, is that too many times when it comes to race, we are so concerned with hurting each other's feelings and failing to realize that, no one intentionally want to hurt people's feelings. But when it comes to race, years ago at Georgia Highlands, the Black Awareness Society brought in a person. Doc had Dr. William Parker come and do an event. And he said when he was talking about race, he said it's like a sore. People just want to circumvent the sore and get to the healing. He said, but that thing, it has to fester, it has to scab over, you have to pick at it. But, you have to go through that whole process to get to the healing. And I feel so often when it comes to race, we want to go from, we got a problem to it's fixed and healed, not dealing with the issue itself. So I'm very happy that y'all have created a platform for, a handful of people to have some serious dialogue in which I think everyone understands that, feelings may be hurt, but we got to go through this process if we truly want to get to the other side. So I'm excited about that. And I want us to be able to share that with the community, and so people can start their own groups if necessary, to have real meaningful dialogue about race.
Well,
so I'm curious, do you see that? I know you see it. So what is it you really want to come out of this, Charles and Cheryl, and how do you feel like it's going?
Cheryl?
I think we are making progress. I think it's slow. I think there is so much for us to learn about each other. There's a lot we share in common. We celebrate that too, but then to learn truly as a white American, I won't ever know what it's like to be Black in America, but I have learned and have been blessed to have the relationships with people who are willing to share that with me. And it does hurt sometimes. And I do say things sometimes that are hurtful, but I'm grateful that they'll correct me. I have found too that it's my responsibility also to learn the history of our country, the real history of our country. And Greg, you and I have talked about some of the books that there are out there. There are a lot of books out there now, and there's so much to learn. I'm embarrassed I didn't know it until now. I've worked in the school system. I worked in public education for 30 years and didn't know, and with a variety of students, and embarrassed to tell you the things I did not know until 5 years ago when we began One Community United. And so I think there are a lot of people that are learning and willing to learn and willing to take that step forward and be vulnerable and know that I know as a white person, I'm going to get it wrong. I know I am, but I'm grateful for the people that will help correct me and help me to do better the next time.
And Greg, I think because of One Community United, and Cheryl and I didn't know each other 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the word comfortable comes to mind. It's difficult to have an honest conversation about an issue like race and have a frank, honest conversation without being comfortable with someone. And that is being willing to be offended and be offensive. That is not the intent. It may come across as being offensive or offended, but it is really a developing of a relationship where you can get to a point to tell someone like Cheryl, hey, that's not right. That's not the way you do it. That's not the way we accept it. That comes across a certain kind of way. And that's what we've been working on, relationships. And I think it took us 5 years really to get to a point where we were that comfortable. It's just, so the issue of race on a national level has not really gotten to the crux of the issue, as you said, Greg, because people just want to cover it over and gloss it over and not really get down to the real hard discussion about what it means. And part of that means confession and repenting on the part of white America. And I don't believe America as a whole is ready for that right now. But what we are glad to see is that when President Biden was running, and after he accepted the nomination, and even after he took the oath, he kept race as his top 4 issues that he was going to deal with. And that takes courage, because not only is he going to lose people in the other party, he's going to lose people in his own party because of that. Because he said, I'm going, and a couple of days ago, he signed an executive order talking about the areas that he wanted to address. And we've done that in education, in community development, in health, in all aspects of life. Race really is a common thread, if you really get down to it.
And Charles and Doc, you're gonna have to stop me, because this conversation, I can just keep going on and on. But
When
Charles,
have I ever stopped you, Greg?
but in listening to what you said, first and foremost, anybody that know me and Doc know we have a long history, over 20 years. So we can honestly ask and say stuff to each other if we really don't know when it comes to race. And even if how somebody else could perceive it as offensive or whatever, it really doesn't, because you know the person intent, and you know who they truly are. And so when I was listening to the president's speech when he was sworn in, the fact that he brought up the word white supremacy, the fact that those things were said are important, but at the same time, I agree with you. I think there are a lot of people who voted for President Biden who are not ready to really pick up that mantle.
Yeah.
And as I say when I talk to Doc all the time, at what cost? See, I think it comes down to what cost are you willing to pay for this that you claim you want? Because it's easy to say I won't change. It's easy to say we want things to get better, but until it comes at a cost to you personally, what are you willing to give up or sacrifice? But I'm glad, I am so excited that y'all have these small group conversations. And I hope out of this taping today, it can spark other people to create small group conversation, because I do think it has to happen in small group format.
Yes.
That people can develop the relationship and the comfort to really be open and honest, so that we can truly get to the crux of the problem. Because I agree 100% with you. At the end of the day, it is race. Race and power is at the center of it. And until we deal with that and address that, I think we just keep staying on this hamster wheel. So I'm just excited that y'all are having these conversations. But I'm just encourage y'all to keep doing it, because I do think it will pay off in the end. But it has to be done.
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And I think once you can have those conversations and you see how issues of race impact so many decisions in our country, in education, in healthcare, in business, in banking, in policing, then you can start to work on how do we change that? How do we make it more equitable? How do we get people to realize their biases and prejudices and make things better for all of us? I know this summer was eye-opening for a lot of people, and there were a lot of people after not just the death, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, but of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and countless others. There were more people, I think, willing to start having those conversations, and it's important. It's important to me.
I have the George Floyd incident, murder, was to me, I was active during the times of the 60s when the riots were happening. And not until people saw on TV fire hoses and dogs being sicked on people in Birmingham that the Civil Rights Act became a law. And I think the George Floyd incident was the Birmingham incident for America in modern times. To see a man 8 minutes and 46 seconds with him begging for his life, and no one having the empathy to really recognize that they were killing someone. And that sparked a reaction. And I think that was the Birmingham incident that happened in the 60s. When you see dogs being sicked on people and water hoses, I think that is a turning point, and that raises consciousness of the nation But the key now is, how do we do it? And I think, as you said, Greg, one community united, we'll start to talk about it in small groups. And that's going to really change the world, really. Start these small conversations.
Mr. Love, we're going to have to take our break here, so we'll continue with this. Lots more discussion to come. Y'all stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute.
For 50 years, Georgia Highlands College has been a community that takes charge. At GHC, we have a mission to provide access to an outstanding education, meeting the career needs of the region, and helping our communities thrive. Every student we graduate becomes a celebration we never forget. We are more than Chargers. We are Chargers taking charge for 50 years and beyond.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're having a conversation with Cheryl Jenkins and Charles Love from One Community United. And, one of the things that hearing the two of you talk, and Greg, you too, about the importance of having open conversations, it reminds me of some of the work that Brian Stevenson is doing. Brian Stevenson of Just Mercy and the Equal Justice Initiative. And he frequently says that unlike some other countries around the world, the United States has been reluctant to deal with its history. And I wonder if that's something that you acknowledge in One Community United, or if you have any ideas about why that is.
Well, again, this is my thinking. When President Obama was elected, there was a huge paranoia from white America about a revenge factor from Black America. That spurred the Tea Party and other groups around the country to look for any day now. The Black people are going to exercise revenge on white people because we now have a Black president. So there's a subconscious awareness, in my opinion, of white America expecting a day of reckoning. And because of that, there's been a consistent suppression of a conversation about race. Because we got some money.
We can't hear you. I'm not sure what happened, but we lost you partially there. But just going on that point Charles made, Cheryl and Doc, that's interesting because I do think there's a factor there to some degree that some white people are afraid of what will happen. But doesn't that in and of itself speaks to the acknowledgement of the injustice that exists? If you are fearful of what will be if some people are in power, based on the history, to me that acknowledges that things are not right. You may not be able to state it specifically, but there's an understanding that the injustice is here and it's been here. So but I do think there's a degree of that thinking for some people in America.
Sadly, I think it's been the history from 400 years ago of people being made fearful intentionally so that white people can stay in power. And it's been, when you look at, which I've read about Reconstruction and what happened and how Jim Crow years came about, when you read when you go to Montgomery. I would encourage everyone to go to Montgomery, to the Equal Justice Initiative Museum and Memorial. And you learn, again, what I keep thinking is, how can I get more white Americans to really learn our history? Because it's been intentional. It's been intentional from the enslavement of people from Africa. We just watched, there's a new documentary out about cocaine, about crack cocaine. If y'all, anyway, there's so much that's been intentional and political, and we have to get through all of that to understand it, I think, to heal and to get to reconciliation. Brian Stevenson is really big on reconciliation, and I'm hoping that I know there's a movement in our community to work more with that group. They are in the process of working with Equal Justice Initiative to bring a marker to Rome to begin that healing process. So we're on our way here. I would like to see us be able to expand into other communities and help educate other folks, which is what we've done with HUG too. We have educated people. That's been a piece of One Community United too. The last speaker we had was Peggy Wallace Kennedy, the daughter of George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, and she was a very good speaker and an example of how to heal and how to move forward.
Very powerful.
Let me ask this, Cheryl, and hopefully Charles, if we can get your sound going back again.
Yeah, I'm going to text him and tell him. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I know that one of the main pieces of One Community United are these small group discussions, and that has been an important element of trying to break down some barriers. But, those even casual discussions, even, just friendly discussions with people you don't know can be challenging to get started. Especially if we're talking about people of different races or cultures who don't really know how to reach out to the other. Is that something, if someone would like to get to that point, can One Community United help them get there?
That engagement is what we're all about. Our mantra is let's talk. And anyone who is willing to have a discussion, we had to, I don't want to use the word ease into this, but Cheryl can attest to the fact I wanted to jump on top of this from the beginning in terms of talking about race. And no, that's, so we had to ease into this really. And anyone who's willing to just come and, if not talk, to listen to the discussion that we're having, it's such it's amazing, a difficult a topic like this, how difficult it is. And you would have to realize the atrocities that were done to African Americans when they entered this country. Even until maybe a couple of hundred years, maybe even 100 years ago, there had to be an amendment in the Constitution about considering African Americans 3/5 of a man. That was in the Constitution. It was in the Constitution that we were property. Thus led to the Dred Scott case in Missouri to determine whether we were property or people. So when you have a mentality that a race of people is property, in your mind, it justifies treating them as property. And so white America has had to deal with that. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you look back on the history and determine how Black people were treated. I mean, if you get into the specifics, I would suggest, we were talking about this too. Have any of you seen the movie 12 Years a Slave?
Of course. Yeah.
That's the most realistic approach of how Black Americans were treated, in my opinion, of all the video film that I've seen about slavery and race. That was a pretty close, accurate depiction of how African Americans were treated, because the guy who went into slavery, who was kidnapped into slavery, was an educated man. But when he went into slavery, he was treated as property, and how he had to deal with that. So it's a tough subject. It's a tough subject. But I would encourage people who want to get engaged with One Community United to join us and just listen to the discussion. If you just want to gradually move into it as we have, to getting to a point where we really want to say this is about race.
Charles, I agree with you. But I guess why I love you, Doc. Me and you are just so different in so many ways, because the reality of it is President Trump received 10 more million votes the second time around. During that whole 4 years, with the killings, race was clearly on the subject line during those 4 years, and he still got 10 million more people. I think here in Florida County, roughly 70% of Romans voted for President Trump. That means roughly 7 out of 10. So when I'm walking down the street, 7 out of 10, how do you really feel about me?
Yeah.
You may be cordial, you may be, you may not be, you may be very respectful, but how do you really feel about me? And that's a reality that we have to deal with. And I think you said it, Cheryl, you have to be intentional. People have to want to learn in order to change. And I'm really not convinced that, put it this way, 74 million people, I ain't saying all of them voted for that reason, but I'm not convinced that everyone is wanting to swallow that bitter pill. But we still have to keep going forward. But there's a reality that 74 million people, the most votes outside of, any president besides Joe Biden, is a reality that's staring us in the face. That a lot of people still see me and you, Charles, somewhat differently, I think. Not as property, but still somewhat differently.
I had the same reaction, Greg, when I woke up to think, after 4 years, what is it that people are seeing so differently from me that they think it's okay to have 4 more years of what we had with President Trump? And not that One Community, we do say, and we are nonpartisan, One Community United. We do want you to check your politics at the door, but I think to have those discussions about what is it that you're seeing different from me, differently, how is it? That is our challenge. And we know that. We know that there are people who don't want to change. But I'm hoping there are enough people slowly. We keep saying One Community United is a marathon, not a sprint. We know that. But we keep hoping to make change and to help people get there.
These times that we experienced the last 4 years has really raised the consciousness of a lot of people. And I think President Trump was for such a time as this to expose in raw form what racism looks like. And I think that's given us a launch pad to build on as One Community United.
Well, we're totally out of time. I want to thank y'all for being with us. Check out the One Community United page on Facebook and learn more about it. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time on Community Watch.